والصلاة والسلام على محمد تبع أحسن الدين وعلى بعد. So, the last class we were covering types of tawhid, and alhamdulillah, types of sifat. And now, no, sorry, tawhid. Now we're going to cover that. So, before we go into that, let's do توحيد إفراد الله بما يختص بطاعة الله تعالى, what is only about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is, in other words, توحيد that you give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his rights. And Allah's rights, first and foremost, al-ubudiyya. Thus, if someone wants to worship something other than Allah ta'ala, person's giving for Allah to something other than him, whatever that person is worshiping. The first right of Allah, the first thing that is only be given to Allah Ta'ala is worship. Second thing that is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his attribute. So if someone was to give an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to other ta'ala, it would also be shirk, go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is only for him. As I just said, what is only for Allah to worship. For example, if someone was to make dua, something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if someone dua to the Prophet, or someone was to make dua to a grave, this person's part of that to something subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second example, an attribute. Example, don't believe horoscopes. Horoscopes are a made-up thing that claim that they know the unseen, right? And horoscope, not going to get at this. So if someone believes attribute, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an attribute, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has an attribute of knowing, i.e. knowing. Allah knows the future. Only Allah knows the future. That is His attribute of absolutely. That's if someone believes fortune telling and trying to tell the future, person this other thing, horoscope, or this has an attribute of Allah which is known. Does this person has committed? Not fundamental. His rights are fundamentally to and now tawhid can also be broken down into an extra category out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in al-rububiyyah, attribute that you say ta'ala as being Rabb. Rabb fundamentally means Allah is a creator, Khaliq, Raziq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's guided by him. Also part of provides for us. Likewise, some scholars they specify this type of tawhid, even though Rabb attribute of fundamentally to Rabb is part of not Allah attribute. The Rabb is a name, and Rububiyyah is an attribute of Allah. But some scholars they specify importance because if Allah is provider, natural conclusion, أنا ربكم فاعبدون. Allah الذي خلقكم to death, die, back to life. Any of these. If I know there's sacrifice for? Why would I worship something other than? Why would I worship something other than? So, this is why some scholars specify Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. على كل حال, last class already covered this. Covered Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, we covered Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, we covered different pillars of worship and so forth. So today we're briefly going to talk about the belief in the names and attributes of Allah, what it means to out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his attributes. Then after that we're going to start talking about shirk and the reality of shirk and the different types of shirk. When it comes to singling out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his attributes, what this means, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, first and foremost, we have to understand that Allah has names. But now Asma al-Husna, Allah says He has the greatest, the best of names, right? And through those names, we're able to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. By us knowing that Allah is Ar-Rahman, we know that He has the attribute of. By us knowing that Allah is an Aziz, mighty, we know He has the attribute of an Izzah, mightiness. By us knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sami', we know that He is the attribute of, and so on and so forth. And it's very important for us to know this, because the more we know who we're worshipping, the better our worship. Know who we're worshipping, the better our worship is. The greatest way for us to know who we're worshipping is by knowing His attributes. The more names you know of Allah, and the more you understand His attributes, the more worshipping, and thus perfect your worship is going to be. As Imam Sa'di he mentions, فإن تمام العبادة متوقف على معرفة الله فيكون ما زاد العبد معرفة بربه كانت عبادته أكمل. Imam Sa'di mentions that the completeness of our worship is proportionate, is dependent on how much we know Allah. Rather, the more the slave of Allah, the greater his worship. For example, a lot of times you're saying, why don't I have khushu when I'm praying? A lot of times because we don't know we're worshipping. We don't know who's standing in front of us. Allah qibla wajhi la sallah. The Prophet said that Allah is in front of us when we're praying. Doesn't mean that Allah is physically in front of us. Allah is above His throne. But in terms of His knowledge, and likewise, Allah could be in front of us, but still above His throne. Like the sun can be in front of us, but still miles and miles and miles ahead of us, away from us. My main point is that if we know who we're worshiping, if we standing in front of Him, we're stand in front of Him in a better way. The importance of knowing the names and attributes of Allah cannot be best enough, right? As Ibn Qayyim mentions, everything has a foundation. A house has a foundation, has a foundation, has a foundation. Everything in this world has a foundation. The foundation of the religion is the belief in Allah. The foundation of this religion is the belief in Allah. And the strength and the height of a building is dependent on its foundation. If I want to build a big skyscraper, I have to spend a lot of time building a strong foundation in order to support all the weight that's going in those stories and levels that building. Similarly, when it comes to the foundation of our deen, the Baqim, he mentions that the height of a building is dependent on its foundation, i.e. your practice of Islam, your understanding of Islam, dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stronger that belief worshipping, stronger. So, I mean, we can't stress enough the importance attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and understanding, as the scholars mentioned, Abdul and others, every single attribute of Allah ta'ala has a reciprocal reaction that is accompanied upon us. Meaning that if I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-hearing, then that should have an effect on how I behave. If I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is sufficient for, that should have an effect on how I behave. Every single attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have create a reaction from us. If I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears everything I'm saying, I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to say the N-word. Why would I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hear pressing, so on and so forth? If I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Basir, all-seeing, I'm not going to watch those things watch behind closed doors. Or I'm not going to things do behind closed doors. I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. Right. If I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a provider, Razaq, then I'm not going to do haram things to make money, because I know at the end of the day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider. Allah says no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider for it. If I truly believe in that, I'm not going to do a haram thing. I know the provider is Allah. That's what's meant by every attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a reciprocal reaction that we have. Right? If we do this, then inshallah we're live with the name and attributes of Allah, become better worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when it comes to belief in the names and attributes of Allah in general sense, because we already covered in attributes of Allah, the first book that we did about a year ago. So we'll go over this. When it comes to the attributes of Allah, fundamentally, we believe in everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described himself with, and his messenger has described him with. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described himself with, and his messenger has described him with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he is the all-hearing. We believe in that, and we believe that Allah hears everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he's the all-seeing. In that attribute, everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he has hands. Allah has hands, and the way that is befitting to him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he has eyes. So Allah has eyes in a way that's befitting. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about himself, we believe in it. Whether we fully understand it or not does not matter. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنْتُمْ أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ. Who knows more, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? Who knows more about Allah? You or himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَاسْأَلُوا بِهِ خَبْرًا. Right? So if you look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes himself in the Quran, you'll find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes himself in two. نفي المجمل والإثبات المفصل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will describe himself in the Quran in two. By negating, number one is by negating imperfections. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will negate the fact that he has children. لم يلد ولم يولد. Allah says he does not have children, nor was he born from a mother. Yani. Allah says لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Allah says not overtake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many times in the Quran that again he has not taken a child. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will negate any imperfection from himself. So of course we negate imperfections from himself. Allah in a general sense, when he describes himself, you're going to negate imperfection. Okay? The second way that you're going to see Allah is going to describe himself is al-ithbat al-mufassal. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to specify different attributes and actions that he does in detail. And that's where the names and attributes come. That Allah is Basir, Allah is Hakim, Allah is Rahman, Allah is Rahim. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will negate in a general sense imperfections, and at the same time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will affirm skills, perfections, and attributes. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he combines this general negation and this specific affirmation and his attributes. Okay? And now when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are four general principles that if we hold on to, we'll make sure that we don't deviate when it comes to our belief in names and attributes of Allah. Here it's going to become a bit technical. If you does not understand something, let me know. I'll explain. Explain something 10 times. You have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there's nothing like him. Nothing. Or before that, you have to understand that we don't the key. Don't say how are the names and attributes of Allah indeed. Allah says in the Quran, Allah says in the Quran that you cannot fully grasp Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You cannot fully understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he has hands, believe that Allah has hands that are befitting to his perfection. But we don't start asking how are the hands of Allah. How big are they? Are they like ours? Do they have skin? Does it have nails? Don't say that. Why? Because Allah never described them to us. And we cannot fully understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he is part of the unseen. We cannot see him. How can our brain try to process, understand something that we cannot see? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more for us to fully understand the essence of certain things about him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Allah says, Allah says, they ask you concerning the soul. Soul is from the affairs of your Lord. A little bit of knowledge. I don't even know the reality of our soul. I don't know where my soul is in my body. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it functions. But it's the essence of my existence. The point that when any one of us dies and our body, people will not say, bring Muhammad. People will say, bring the body of Muhammad. Bring the body of AbdulHayy. The body of Aisha, whatever. So the essence, our soul, this fundamental thing that is the essence of us as an individual, don't even know what it's made of, where it is, how it is, what's the color of it. We don't have any clue about it. Right? So how can we then try to understand the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we understand that Allah has hands that are befitting to perfection. We understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a sight that's befitting to his perfection. We understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a face that's befitting to his perfection. And just because لا يلزم اتفاق الشيئين في الاسم أن يتفق في الحقيقة والمسمى. Just because two things have the same does not mean that they have the same essence. This table here has legs, but the legs of a table and my legs are complete. So all of us understand the idea of what a leg is. If I was to tell you the leg of a table, you wouldn't confuse that with my leg. Right? Likewise, an eagle has eyes. I have eyes. An eagle can see miles ahead of it. Its eyes are completely different than mine in terms of how they function and their capability. My eyes, I can barely see with all my glasses. So just because two things have the same thing does not mean that the reality of them. Does Allah have eyes? Yes, but Allah has eyes that are referring to his perfection. Does Allah has sight? Yes, but Allah has sight that's referring to his perfection. Okay? The first thing we have to understand is that we don't do don't try to understand the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understand in a general sense what hearing. Understand Allah has a hearing that's perfect, that hears everything. How does it function? Function with wavelengths and all those things. Right? That's the first principle. Don't say how are the names and attributes of Allah in detail. The attributes I'm talking about. Okay? Second thing we don't do is that we don't do a tashdih. We don't make examples. Allah says, Allah says there's nothing like him. Thus we don't say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like anything, nothing like him. So Allah's sight is not like our sight. Allah's hand is not like our hands. Because Allah says there's absolutely nothing that is similar. Right? Allah says he has the best any description. Right? So we don't make examples of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and try to make or say anything about him is similar. And then finally, when it comes to attributes of Allah, do not, number one, change their literal meaning. Allah says he has hands, he has hands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he has eyes, he has eyes. Allah says he has mercy, he has mercy. Don't try to change the literal of, oh, it hands, it means blessing. It doesn't mean mercy, it means kada. It doesn't mean this, it means that. No. If Allah says he has this, he has this. We don't try to change of what Allah says about himself. Okay? And then number four, the last one, is that we don't negate the actual meaning of these names. We don't say Allah does not see, Allah does not have hands, Allah does not have eyes, and so on. The four things. Number one is we don't say how. How are the names? How are Allah's hands? Don't make examples. Allah's hands are not like our hands. It's nothing like him. Don't change their little meaning, or it doesn't mean hand, it means blessing. And we don't negate it outright by saying Allah does not see, or Allah does not hear, or Allah does not do anything. This seems true. But unfortunately, many deep sects in Islam, the thing that they names like Maturidiyya, Ash'ari, Jahmiyyah, all those titles that you hear, all those sects that you hear, most of them, the thing that made them the reason why they went to stars of their various is did this. Started saying how are Allah's hands, for example. And then that led them to start making examples. They said, oh, Allah's hands are like our hands. Come with that. Allah said there's nothing like him. And then once they reached that conclusion, they said, well, there's only two possibilities, because we can't say that Allah has hands like us. So either it doesn't really mean hands, it means blessings, a'udhu billah, or it doesn't really, actually it doesn't even have hands. It's a metaphorical thing, yani. It's not a real thing. Like I said, this is a long discussion. Covered it in details, covered the names and attributes of Allah. I don't think go into greater detail. If you have any questions, I can during class or after class. If you have any confusions about what I said here, if you have any confusion about these I mentioned here, let me know during class or after class, because it's very important. very, very important. You don't have any doubts about this or anything. So this is fundamentally the attributes of Allah, guys. You negate those things Allah has negated from Himself. That Allah does not have a child. Allah does not have. Allah does not slumber. No. And we affirm all the things Allah has affirmed Himself in terms of attributes without H. How are they? Without doing examples like this, without doing changing little meaning, without doing and the meanings. I want to remember these. Remember the acronym H stands for how, E stands for examples, S stands for and stands for negative. Okay, I think this is. There's more that we can talk about here, but I'd rather just leave. Moving on, now we talk about the opposite of Tawheed. We're going to talk about the opposite of Tawheed. And now when it comes to the opposite of Tawheed, which is Shirk, first you need to understand a few things. First you need to go back to the definition. Tawheed is ifrad Allah ma yakhtasib. Tawheed is that you single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is only. Tawheed is that you single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is only. Or in other words, you can also describe it as you give Allah His rights. Giving Allah and only Allah His rights that He does. Allah's right, or what is only for Him, are two things, right? Ibadah, worship, the act of worship other than Him, and His attributes. Don't give an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Give an act of worship like praying, fasting, dua to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise, you do not give an attribute like Allah's knowledge to other than Him by saying that other than Allah knows. Any of those two scenarios, you're doing shirk because you're doing the opposite of Tawheed. Shirk is the opposite of Tawheed. So Tawheed is singing out Allah in order to. Shirk is taswir to ghayrillah billah fi shay min khasasillah. Shirk is that you make something other than Allah equal to Allah. So Tawheed is that you single out Allah in order to worship and attributes. Shirk is that you make something other than Allah equal to Allah in one of those two. Either by worshipping that thing or by giving an attribute to that thing that only is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the easiest to understand shirk. Okay? So this is a basic breakdown of shirk. Shirk is that you make something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equal to Allah in something for Allah. As the hellfire, Allah in kunna lafi dhalali mubin, sawaykum bi rabbil alameen. In the hellfire, they're going to really were astray when He made you equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Made you equal to Allah. Yani when we made you idols, what was only for example, worship or. That being said, shirk can further be classified into two types. Shirk can further be classified into two different types. There's major shirk and there's minor shirk, right? Major shirk and minor shirk. Minor shirk, minor shirk is any action or belief that would lead to major shirk. Any action or belief that would lead major shirk, considered minor shirk. We're going to see some examples of actions that will lead somebody to commit major shirk. Okay? Major shirk, on the other hand, is the action of shirk that makes you. Major shirk, the action of shirk, so action of making something other than Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will make you leave the fold of Islam. So minor shirk does not make you leave the fold of Islam, but major shirk makes you leave. Minor shirk does not make you leave Islam, but major shirk makes you leave. Okay? Okay, that's, if you will, the number one difference between minor shirk. Another thing about major shirk nullifies all your good. Someone commits shirk, all of his or her become nullified. وَلَئِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ. Allah says, if you were to commit shirk, your actions will become nullified. لَقَدْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ وَإِلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ لَئِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ. Allah said, really revealed to you that if you were to commit shirk, all your actions will become nullified. Another thing with major shirk is that major shirk, Allah does not forgive it. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ. Allah says He does not forgive that someone commits shirk with Him. Allah does not forgive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that someone commits shirk with Him. Likewise, another thing with shirk is that prevents you from paradise. إِنَّهُ مَن يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ الْجَنَّةَ. Allah says, really those who shirk, Allah has made Jannah haram upon them. Okay? That's an important thing to understand. Now, there are many different actions that could be classified as being major shirk or minor shirk. But these are just some general dawabit, some general definition principles that should help you in understanding the difference. Okay? As far as major shirk, fundamentally for me, if someone gives an act of worship to other than Allah, it's major. Someone prays to other than Allah. Someone fasts for other than Allah. Someone does any of these actions for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or for anything like this, that this is someone prays to a person has committed. Okay? As far as minor shirk, I'll give you guys some examples of minor shirk. The shirk is also going to give more examples of major. So, as you can see, shirk is something that all of us should be very scared of. Because you're Muslim doesn't mean you. Because Ibrahim himself said, وَجُنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَنْ نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامَ. Ibrahim, who broke the idols with his hands. Ibrahim, Khalil ar-Rahman, close friend of Ar-Rahman, one who broke the idol with his hands. One of the du'as that he made when he was building the Kaaba is what? Oh Allah, prevent me and my children from worshipping the idols. Ibrahim himself was scared of worshipping idols. Ibrahim himself was scared of doing shirk. So what about us? What about us? We never feel safe from shirk. رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنكَ رَحْمَةً. Right? Allah says, I believe that Allah, do not let our hearts deviate after you've guided them. Okay, so we have to understand that it's not like, oh, I'm Muslim. Happy to me. Yeah. Many Muslims are falling into shirk. Of course, so if you go back home, some of the practices that to agree, the awliya of Allah. So my main point is here that this is not not something that's light or something that not takes and or oh, I must. It is very important in all of us. The book here, I won't go into everything. I just complicated. But in the book here, it gives us, for example, of actions that are major. The book here, the author, he gives for examples of actions that can be considered major. The first one is shirk al-du'a. Sorry, the first one is you making du'a to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Making du'a to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an action of shirk, because you're giving a right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is worship, part of worship, du'a, to other than Him. Rather, the Prophet said, du'a mukhur ibadah. The Prophet said that du'a is the essence. The Prophet said that du'a mukhur ibadah, or lubbul ibadah. The du'a is the essence of worship. Why? It's because we're making du'a. Du'a is one of the manifestations of our soul, that I am the one who needs for my creator. No action, or very few actions that show that du'a. So it's the essence of what ibadah, what's the mission. Then the essence of that is clearly manifested. Right? That's why du'a is one of the actions that Allah loves. Right? And the Prophet said the person does not ask Allah, Allah gets angry. person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not, person that does not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah gets angry. Right? So Allah is the opposite. If you ask Him, ask me. Right? But Allah is the opposite. You don't ask Him, He gets. What you ask Him, the more the more Allah He will love you. Okay? Thus, if you were to give a dua to other than Him, then this would be because that worship, active worship, other than Allah, making something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the Prophet or the Great, Allah by giving that person an act of worship. Okay? Allah says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ الَّذِينَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي. Allah said, and your Lord says, call upon me and I will answer you. Verily those who are too arrogant to worship me, they're going to enter the hellfire humiliation. Allah said, call upon me and I will answer you. Those who are too arrogant to worship me, i.e. to make dua, so Allah He equated here ibadah with dua, then He's going to enter the hellfire humiliation. Right? And in this ayah, if you look at it, either you can be humble to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the dunya and worship Him, to Him, or Allah will humble you in the hereafter of the right? So Allah says, those who are too arrogant to dua for me, or to make dua to me, I'll make him enter the hellfire, dakhirin, humiliated. Right? That's just a side benefit. Okay? So this is an example of major. Focus on that. Same pray to something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to fast to something ta'ala. All examples of. Okay? The second example that he mentions was called shirk al-niyya wal-irada wal-qasd. The second one here is what can be roughly translated as the shirk of intention. This is not riyah here. That's not what's meant here. What's meant here is someone only worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for worldly reasons. Someone only worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for worldly reasons. This is pretty much a munafiq. Someone who the only reason why he's praying, only reason why he's fasting, just for a worldly reason. This is shirk in intention. The person is intending something other than Allah completely, not partially, completely. Meaning the person has no desire to get close to Allah. The only reason why he's praying, just so as being a Muslim. You might say like, why would someone do it? Multiple reasons. Let's say, for example, someone who wants to make kafir, okay, I'm going to act as if I'm a Muslim just to get this worldly thing, which is pleasure of my time, whatever. Right? So this is an example of that. Okay? Or someone who might be claiming to be a and doing da'wah for money. It happened, by the way. It happened not too long. A couple that da'wah online, or whatever, and people found them out to be munafiqun. I was munafiq, said God, there's no. The person was the only reason why he was doing any acts of worship, fasting, making da'wah, ruqyah, whatever, was just for the. So this was meant here, and the or should talked about is من كان يريد حتى دون زينة نوفي إليهم أعمالهم فيها وهم فيها لا يبخسون أولئك الذين ليس في الآخرة إلى النار وحبط ما. Allah says those who want this worldly life and his adornments will give him or will reward him for his actions in life, and he will not be oppressed. And in giving him this life if he wants. Allah is not careful, right? But then Allah says أولئك الذين في الآخرة إلى النار. These are people that have nothing in the hereafter. وَحَبِطَ عَمَلُهُمْ وَحَبِطَ مَا صَنَعُوا فِيهَا, and all their actions are nullified, are useless. وَبَاطِلُ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, what they used to do falsehood. People are kuffar. Allah clean person as being kuffar. Okay? This is the second example of major. As far as riyah, so riyah showing off, not major. And we're going to talk about in detail. Second thing, the third type of example. These are not only like they're not the only types of major shirk. They're just examples. Okay. The third one is shirk al-ta'a. The third one is you obeying someone, making that which is haram halal, that which is halal haram, while believing that that person. So Allah says, أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ وَشَرَعُوا لَهُمْ الدِّينَ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ. Allah says, do they have partners that have legislated that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not? Likewise, al-hukmu man hukmu illa lillah. Judgment and ruling only belongs to Allah. The names of Allah is al-hakam, the judge. From that, Allah has the attribute of al-hakam, judges. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that deserves and has the right to legislate that which is halal and that which is haram. Only one that deserves. That's part of his attributes. Right? So if someone believes that there's something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has the right to legislate that which is halal or that which is haram, this is shirk. Why? Because this person is giving something that's only for Allah, the attribute of judgment, something other than Allah. This person is committing shirk because he's making something other than Allah equal to Allah and something that's only for Allah, which is the attribute of judgment. Okay, so it's major shirk versus a kafir. This is why democratic system, parliaments, that's all kufr, right? And anybody believes that yes, the democratic system, parliaments, gathering and deciding that they were going to make this haram, that they were going to make haram. Anybody believes that and thinks this is okay is a kafir. Because he's saying that this person are similar to Allah and have the same right as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this thing halal, to make this haram. Okay? So we have to be very careful in these societies. Allah says, Allah says the previous people, they took their monks and their rabbis as lords besides Allah. Right? And if you look at the tafsir of this, but what's meant by this is that the Adi ibn Hatib, I'll just go into Adi ibn Hatib, who was a Sahabi, a Christian. When he heard this verse, he said, we didn't used to worship, like we used to pray to our monks and our religious figures. But how do we take them as Lord? The Prophet then answered by saying, do not obey them in what is halal, obey them in what is haram. The Prophet said, this is worshiping them. Right? This is one of the shirk, one of the kufr that the people before they did. Okay? So anybody believes that there's something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that deserves to judge and rule down which is halal or haram, the person has committed shirk. Why? It's something other than Allah equal to Allah and something that's for Allah, which is the attribute of judgment. Okay? Now, an important point though, you guys have to be very careful here. An important point here is that to obey someone making that which is halal haram or that which is haram halal happen in two. It can either just be a sin, I'm not saying it's just be a sin, not kufr, or it can be major shirk. Depends on the person's. And for example, if someone believes that it's okay for me okay for me to take off my hijab. Okay for me to take off my hijab. Because I heard this sheikh say that we're in the Western world, and in the Western world, kada, kada, kada. So I say, okay, yeah, you know what? Now not wearing a hijab is halal, and the nice to not wear hijab. If the sister's doing this out of trying to follow her desires, just try to go fatwa shopping to find stuff that will allow her to do this is a sin. The major sin, it's not shirk. Because it's not that the sister believes that this person has the right or that which is haram, halal. But it's just that the person is following their desires and trying to find a fatwa that will serve their desires. Similar to someone and he believes that it's okay to buy a house with mortgage, right? And deal with riba. Everybody knows that riba is haram. Mortgages are part of riba. If someone decides that no, and I found a fatwa that makes halal and so on and so forth, not that the person thinks that riba is halal. The person knows that riba is haram, but the person is following her desires and trying to find a fatwa that will permit them in act of riba. Right? So this person obeying somebody in making that which is haram halal, yes, right? Because dealing with riba is haram. But the person is not doing it out of a belief that this person deserves to do or has the right to change their law. coming from following the desires. Okay? It will only become shirk if the person believes that no, this person has a right to change it. We're living in the 21st century. We have to teach fiqh, we have to reinvent Islamic law, and this is what we're doing right? Same thing, for example, with the alphabet. Someone that believes that okay, and now we have to change the rule that okay to be whatever, and the person believes that yes, this person has the right to change the rule. We have to change and we can now judge as a group that it has to change because the person believes that this person actually has the right and actually has the attribute of being able to judge that which is halal and haram. Okay? But if the person is just following it, not because of out of a belief, out of trying to get something that's haram to this haram thing, not it's a to me he mentioned as far as the specific right? But that's how the scholars have broken it down. As far as specific, right? I mean, I would say number one, whoever's saying that, very careful who you hang around with. That type of kalam is the kalam of the Khawarij. So I would be very careful when you listen to the person. And I wouldn't expose myself to those doubts or follow those doubts. As far as specific for this stuff of the intention, I mean, we can go back to the hadith in Man'ama bin Yat. Actions are based upon their intention. What is this person's intention by doing this action? Right? And because this is a general principle of Islam and fiqh. And for example, someone prostrates other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the action can be shirk or not shirk based on intention. The person prostrating to another person because he's scared, or because that judo and or is a person prostrating to the person because I'm doing prostrating ibadah. Understand? No. Yeah. No problem. I mean, even now, scholars have different on. But at the end of the day, it goes back to the general principle. Actions are based on their. So prostrating to something is haram, but whether it's shirk or kufr or not depends on the person. No, if someone goes to prostrate, everybody else is prostrating. The person doesn't know that they're not supposed to prostrate on the. Not the person's a kafir now. Depends what the intention behind the person. But dua can only be done with the intention of worshiping. I think you're asking. And the only reason why someone make dua to something else is because that person has the what happens in the or has the ability of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the very action of dua itself, as the Prophet said, it is worship, right? But when it comes to actions like for example, prostrating and you've been bowing and things like that, it goes back to the intention of. Not saying that the action is not haram, whether it's in point of becoming shirk, you have to look at the intention of the person. General sense, and in general sense, when it comes to the act, when it comes to the or the wabit and conditions and inventors of, right? From them is making sure that the person is not making a mistake, right? For that is Allah Prophet said that my nation has, or Allah has forgiven my nation mistakes, right? Or what forgetful of, or what they're forced to do. So if someone does an action of shirk or of kufr, but they might have done it out of mistake, like they don't even know what they're doing. They're not kuffar, right? There's a clear proof for that. Likewise, another is that they're not being forced. But obviously, not they're not outside the fold of Islam. And then after that, even then after that, judging someone as being a kafir can be done by an Islamic judge or by a scholar. It can't be done by a regular person, right? You have to understand that you're judging someone as non-Muslim. Islamic ruling that will change, will have legal repercussions. The person's divorce automatically becomes non if he's happens. The person then his inheritors will not inherit from him. Obviously the issue of apostasy comes in, and so on. It's not something that a regular 9 to 5 Muslim based on a 5 conversation. But I would say just careful. But at the end of the day, for what you mentioned, explain intention. Right? In the manner of acts are based on their intention. What's the intention of the action? Is it a sin? Yes. Does it become shirk? Depends on the intention. Okay, so this is shirk al-ta'a. So and I will go and you go look at what they maintain about this issue and what Sheikh bin Baz said about it. The different factors talked about. As far as the Khawarij and those, of course they're gonna not say. In no sense, careful. Okay, moving forward. Next one here he mentions, the next example of major shirk that he mentions is shirk al-mahabba. Is you doing shirk for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of love. Now we explained this in those last class. That are here, we're not here. I'll try to explain. So there are 4 different types of love in Islam. Loving something else can happen in 4 different ways, as Imam Sa'di mentioned, others. The first one is what's called mahabbatullah, is your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is mahabbatun ubudiyyah. This is a type of love that stems from a place of humility that leads to yourself and to fit yourself to the one loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mahabbatun ubudiyyah. As Ibn Qayyim mentions, المحبة لا يحد إلا بنفسه. Love is not something that you can define except by itself. There's no definition of love that does it justice. So the best way to define what love is by itself. Love is the most fundamental, or one of the most fundamental human emotions that love is. I don't think it's something that needs to be described. I don't think it's something that can be described as the He mentions that anybody who has tried to define love have never done it justice. Love is defined by itself. So mahabbatullah is this type of love that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that stems, or that comes from and sleep, and that pulls us and encourages us. Okay? Second type of love that you'll find in this world, mahabbatun fillah, loving for His. Second type of love that you'll find in this world, and as the Prophet said, the strongest bond of faith, loving for His, loving you hating. Second type of love is you loving those things Allah loves, hating those things Allah hates. Opposite. You love the prophets, you love Salah, you love Imām, you love all these things, right? The third type of love that you're going to find in this world is mahabbatun ma'allah. People that love other things or with their love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People that love other things equal or similar to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, from people are those who take other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as rivals, and they love these things similar to their love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People that they might love Allah, but they love Jesus similar, even more than love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Might love Allah, but they love their children, or their tribe, whatever the case may be, similar or more than love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we're talking about here when we're talking about me. Someone has love of something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equal or more than their love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is not a Muslim. Because mahabba is, as Ibn Sa'd mentions, ruh tawheed. And the essence of tawheed, ruhtuhu wa ruhu mahabbatullah, or ikhlas mahabbati lillah. The essence of what tawheed is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your love of Him. Right? So if you give your love of worship to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is action of. Okay? Again, I clarified this like in last class. Debating how much I want to go into details here. But we have to understand something, which what is worship? Right? What is worship? There are three major definitions that are given out there. But the definition of Ibn Qayyim is that mahabba is absolute love with absolute that the essence of what worship is absolute love with absolute. So when you're saying La ilaha illallah, you're saying La ilaha illallah, that there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah. Essentially what you're saying is that the only thing that deserves my absolute love and my absolute and complete submission is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And thus if someone was to give their worship, their love of worship to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this would be shirk. This would be shirk concerning the essence of what worship is. Loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala totally and completely, absolute. Okay? Very important to understand. Someone loves something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equal to love Allah, that's committed shirk. Okay? As far as the sign of someone falling into this is them preferring something other than Allah or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكين ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله ورب سبحانه. Allah says, if your fathers, sons, your wives, if your brothers, if your wives, if your tribes, your business, your houses are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger, until Allah brings. The sign of you loving these things for love of Allah, that you're willing to sin against Allah for your love of these things. That you're willing to sin out of your love for your father. Willing to sin out of your love for your tribe. Willing to sin out of your love for making money. Someone's continuously doing this, to the point that their love of money becomes greater than love of Allah, that they're willing to do all type of haram things to get money. This person loves money more than love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person has committed. That's why the Prophet said, the Prophet said, ruined, destroyed is the slave of the gold coin and the slave of the silver coin. The person that his entire life is about getting money, point that he brings or puts more emphasis on money than his worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what's meant here by mahabbatun ma'allah. This is what's meant here by mahabbatun ma'allah. And like I said, what's it called? I covered this topic in great details last class. I don't know if it's on the YouTube channel. I recommend you go watch that, because it's very important to understand this. Okay, the last type of love that happens in this world is mahabbatun tabi'iyya, is natural love. This is the natural love that you have for your parents, for your spouse, children, natural love. And there's nothing wrong with this. It only becomes a problem if your love for these becomes similar or more than your love for Allah. Remember what the sign of that is, right? Of course, it's natural for us to love our parents. If our love for our parents becomes greater than love for Allah, and the sign of that is that we start obeying our parents, even in all those things Allah has made haram, then this is a sign that we're falling in mahabbatun ma'allah, loving something with Allah, and similar or more than love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And the greatest sign that we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we are obeying His Messenger. Allah fattabi'uni. Sorry, yuhbib. Allah says, if you love Allah, then follow me, and for Allah will love you. Right? This is ayat al-mahda. This is the ayah that came down as a test. So, the greatest way for you to whether you love Allah is how much you are following the Prophet. How much you are following the Prophet. The more you're following the Prophet, the more you love Allah. Because Allah made that the sign and the criteria. Right? So everybody claims that they love Allah. But the sign of them truly loving Allah or not is whether they're following the Prophet. The more you're following the Prophet in terms of how you behave, how you dress, how you act, and so on and so forth, the more you love Allah. The less, the less. That's not me who said it, not you said it, not a scholar who said it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it. Allah said, if you want to know if you love me, follow the Prophet. Right? And then I will love you. Okay? You have to understand how, and as Ibn Qayyim mentions, every action that an individual does fundamentally stems from love. We go to sleep, love food. Every action that a human being does that happens stems from fundamentally love. Right? And then it's just whether our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is good, love for the other. That's why Baraji mentions Baraji mentions that all sins happen because of put our love for ourselves greater than our love for Allah's Messenger. Most of us, when we're sinning, it's not because we don't. Most Muslims, all Muslims, بالضرورة علم الضرورة لا يجوز الاختلاف فيه لا يجوز الفكر فيه. Every Muslim knows that alcohol is haram, zina is haram, dating is haram. No Muslim doesn't. Right? But why are Muslims doing it? Not because they don't know, but it's because they're preferring what they want, what their soul wants, over what Allah's Messenger. All sins stem from us putting the love for ourselves and what we want over a love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know this thing's haram, but because we want it, we're going to do it because we are loving ourselves more than we have to be very careful when it comes to sinning in general. Allah says the person who's taking his soul as his God or as her God. Right? So you have to be very careful. It's already been about an hour. One thing I wanted to mention, I just forgot to mention, is what is the source of shirk? Why do people fall into shirk? Right? And fundamentally, the source of shirk is two. We're going to go into more on the, but fundamentally, it's two. الجهل بالله والجهل بالخلق وتعالى. Fundamentally, shirk happens because of people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more ignorant someone is of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more that person is going to. As Al-Qayyim mentions, أصل الشرك في العالم تعطيل كماله أو بعضه وسوء الظن برب. Al-Qayyim mentions that the essence, source of all shirk in this world, people negating Allah's perfection or some of it, having evil thoughts of it. Yeah, having evil thoughts of Him. And yeah, thoughts of Him. Ibrahim said, you want to worship a false idol other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If that's the case, then what is your assumption of Allah? How negative must your assumption of Allah be that you think that these two? Allah says they do not give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his proper position, proper assumption. They don't fully know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Based on their warped understanding of Allah, they do shirk. Associate partners with Him. They think they can worship other things instead of Him. They think that Allah needs helpers, and so on and so forth. Right? The second source of shirk, being ignorant of the reality of human and over glorifying them. And we know that the first people that committed shirk were the people of Nuh alayhi salam. The first people that committed shirk were the people of Nuh alayhi salam. Right? The reason why is why? Because they made statues out of righteous people to remind them of worshipping Allah, but they went to an extreme, and the fact that they righteous people started worshipping them. Why do people worship the Prophet ﷺ? They go to an extreme in their praising of the Prophet ﷺ. Why do people worship people? Because they go to an extreme glorifying these righteous awliya of Allah, what are the case? Why do people show off? Because they give too much importance to human. Why would you try to show off the fact that you're another human being that uses the bathroom just cannot bring you any good or harm, gonna guide just like you, and at the day of judgment cannot do one single cent of good? Because we give more importance you give, the less you're going to be connected to Allah. I'm going to read statements here, further explain the point that I mentioned. Then we'll stop there because I know it's already an hour. I don't like the last too long. So Abu Qasim al-Asbahani, one of the great scholars of Islam, Shaykh al-Sunnah in his time, mentions المحجة في بيان المحجة أول فرض فرضه الله على خلقه معرفته فإذا عرفه الناس عبدوه. Abu Qasim al-Asbahani he mentions the obligation that Allah obligated creation. Because if people knew Allah, they would worship Him. Allah says, know that there's nothing worth worshiping. فينبغي للمسلمين أن يعرفوا أسماء الله وتفسيرها. So it's fitting that Muslims know Allah's names and their explanation. It's not just that you know Allah is al-Hakim. Okay, what does that mean, practically speaking? How does that translate to your life? Talked about at the beginning of class. فَيُعَظِّمُونَ اللَّهَ حَقَّ عَظَمَتِهِ. So when they know who Allah is, they know His names and attributes, they'll glorify Him the way that befits Him. وَمَا قَدَرَ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدَرِهِ. Right? وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبَضَتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتُ مَطْوِيَاتٌ بِيَمِينِهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى عَمَّا يُشْرِكُونَ. Also, they don't give Allah His proper assumption. And the seven heavens and the earth will be rolled up in His hand. Right? Why would I worship anything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if I know He's literally roll up all that we see? Right? وَلَوْ أَرَادَ رَجُلٌ أَنْ يُعَامِلَ رَجُلًا طَلَبَ أَنْ يَعْرِفَ اسْمَهُ وَكُنْيَتَهُ. He says, if you wanted to deal with somebody else, if I wanted to start a relationship with somebody else, if I wanted to start a business with somebody else, if I wanted to start some type of relationship with somebody else, I would get to know the guy's name, where does he come from, what type of person is he, right? Do I click with him? Do I click with her? Right? So if we want to start a beneficial relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to know who the person is. Right? وَاسْمَ أَبِيهِ وَجَدِّهِ. You would know who his father's name is, his grandfather's name is. وَسَأَلَ عَنْ صَغِيرِ أَمْرِهِ وَكَبِيرِهِ. And you would ask about what type of person he is, or how does he act. And so you would analyze it before I'm going to start, doing commerce with you. Right? فَاللَّهُ الَّذِي خَلَقَنَا وَرَزَقَنَا. So Allah is the one who created us and provides for us. وَنَحْنُ نَرْجُو رَحْمَتَهُ. And the one that we hope for His mercy. وَنَخَافُ مِنْ سَخَطِهِ. And we fear for His punishment. أَوْلَ أَن نَعْرِفَ أَسْمَاءَهُ وَنَعْرِفَ تَفْسِيرَهَا. It's more befitting and more, it's more befitting وَأَوْلَى that we know names, that we know their meaning. Right? And Muslims don't know the details of some soccer player. They won't know the difference between Khabir. They won't even know what Latif means. They won't know the difference between Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, but they know the details of this. Very sad. Right? So he says, Baqi mentions also, وَهَذِهِ الْمَنْزِلَةُ تَابِعَةٌ لِلْمَعْرِفَةِ. The Baqi mentions that your glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proportional to your understanding of Him. فَعَلَى قَدْرِ الْمَعْرِفَةِ يَكُونُ تَعْظِيمَ رَبِّ. So, proportionate to how much you know Allah is going to be your glorification. In qalb, in your heart. وَأَعْرَفُ النَّاسُ بِهِ أَشَدُّهُمْ تَعْظِيمًا وَإِجْلَالًا. And those who know Allah more, then their glorification of Him is more. وقد ذم الله تعالى من لم يعظمه حق عظمته ولا عرفه حق معرفته ولا وصفه بحق وصفه فقال تعالى ما لكم لا ترجون الله وقارا. The Shaykh says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he admonishes those who did not give Him His proper glorification, did not know Him the way they should be known, and not describe Him the way they should be described, when He said, and they do not have proper assumption, not truly have hope in Allah the way that He described. Different tafsir about this verse. Hard to translate. Okay, let's continue. Let's see what else said about this. Briefly go find the log books. Okay, I'm reading from 500 pages. Trying to find a place. Ibn Qayyim ends, the author here ends it by saying وكل شرك في العالم فوصفه وتعطيل فإنه لولا تعطيل كماله أو بعضه أو ظن السوء به لما أشرك به. So he brings a statement that Ibn Qayyim mentioned, that I mentioned at the beginning, that the source of all shirk in this world, people negating to Allah or some of it, and having bad assumptions of Him. If it wasn't for people negating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection and having bad thoughts of Him, one would associate partners with Him. This is fundamentally the source of people shirk, guys. More details, right? If you go into the Quran, you're going to find that there are more reasons why people do shirk. More specifically, we mentioned that there are a total of 5 reasons why people commit shirk, but the main reasons is what I mentioned. People not knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and then people over glorifying humans, not knowing how weak they are. Or you understand how no one can bring you any good. No reason why you should show off, right, and try to show people that you're this, that, and that no one can bring you good or remove harm from you. And the more you realize who Allah is, how perfect He is, naturally the more you want to worship, unless you're going to want to care about people. I'm going to end with the qayyim that mentions that all of good manners summarized on a harfain, 2 statements. What Abdul Jilani mentioned, which is that kun ma'allah ila khalq wa ma'an khalq bila nafs. Abdul Jilani mentioned that be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without people, about yourself. Remember that is make sure your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is between Him and no one else is in that relationship. No one else dictates what you do. In the sense that by prayer I'm only praying. People see me, people think me, it doesn't. Right? الذين as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكرا إنما نطعمه لوجه الله لا نريد. Allah says from the attributes, things the believers used to enter paradise, that they used to feed the poor and the orphan, prisoner, and they will say, we're only thinking of Allah, we don't want thanks from you, and we don't want any reward from you. I'm going to do this. People thank me, people notice me, people, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. لقد أرسلنا رسلا من قبلك منهم من قصصنا عليك ومنهم من لم نقصص عليك. Last time we sent messengers for you. Some of them related to you, praise. Some of them we did not. There are many messengers, but we have no clue who they were, what were their names were, what they did. Allah knows them. That's sufficient. Right? So be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without the people. And be with the people without self. Meaning, don't base your relationship with people based on how they necessarily base your relationship with people Allah wants. You're my parent, Allah please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether you respect that or not, it's up to you. But I'm going to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Doesn't mean I'm going to allow myself to be, or I'm going to allow myself to be hurt. Sometimes I'm trying. Allah does not want us to purposely put ourselves in harmful situations. One is that focus on doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you. Don't expect things from them. Okay? Don't necessarily expect things from them, but you expect everything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Al-Maqrizi mentions, Tawheed, حقيقة التوحيد أن ترى الأمور كلها من الله رؤية تقطع عن الجفاء والأسباب. Al-Maqrizi mentions that the tahqiq, or the حقيقة التوحيد, the reality of Tawheed, that you see that everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that cuts you off from looking at other than Him. That you realize that everything in this life comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Focus on that to the point that you do not stop looking at others for. Stop turning at others for. Okay? As Ibn Qayyim mentions, that أصل الشرك تعليق القلب بغير الله. أصل الشرك وقاعدته والبنية عليه تعلق القلب بغير الله. Ibn Qayyim mentions that the essence of shirk and the foundation it's based upon is your heart becoming attached to other than Allah. Whenever your heart becomes attached to other than Allah, your heart starts other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shirk happens at that time. In whatever form it may be, whether it be riyah, that your heart becomes attached to how people see. You start doing things based on whether they like me, they don't like me, or whether it becomes the point of you in a more major way, that your heart becomes attached to some individual to the point that you think, I'm going to prostrate to this person, I'm going to make dua to this person. At the end of the day, it all stems from your heart becoming attached to other things. That was going to end one last story, guys. I'm going to end with this. Rajab, great scholar of Islam. Rajab al-Hanbalani. And once he was teaching in class in the morning with his students, and he was explaining an issue of fiqh, most likely. And he did a great job at explaining the issue. Later on in the day, Ibn Rajab, the scholar, was called the house of a governor. Called to the house of a governor or a judge, government official. House, there was a lot of other scholars and people, lots of people. Who was there? So they started having an Islamic discussion about different topics, and the topic that he had explained and he had taught in the morning came up. Ibn Rajab was there with his students. I attended that class in the morning. Ibn Rajab in that gathering did not say anything. Even though they were talking about the issue that he taught that morning, he didn't say anything to talk about. After the Masjid, after the gathering ended, and he was going back home, one of the students went to Ibn Rajab and he said, in the morning, you had explained that issue that they were talking about in a way that they were not even able to come close to. And the way you explained that issue to us in the morning was much better than any other input, any other scholar, any other that gathering said. But why didn't you mention? Why didn't you mention the knowledge that you had and explain your opinion on that issue? Then مجلسي معكم كان لنا وذاك مجلس بسيط لنا. Then my gathering, guys, was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like that gathering, I feel that it was for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That gathering that I have for you, Masjid, just my students, think of Allah. Allah saw what I was doing. I was with my students. But that majlis there, that gathering there of all those big thoughts and all those names, I would fear that if I was to talk and I was to start saying these things, rather than saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they stay quiet. That's what I'm talking about here. That you be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for other people. Focus on the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's going to be closer to Him. As far as the people, what's going to bring you closer to them, more rank with them, and so on, trying to mu'amalat al-nas. This is not correct. AbdulHayy mentions this. عد الناس وأصحاب القبور إنه لا يعامل أحد أخاك دون الله يهدي بالله وتهديه. I'll stop here.